Hi, I'm George Stancliffe. I'm the author of Speed Reading for Kids. Today I'd like to talk about what is a natural speed reader and how do they become that way. Okay, this is a interesting subject because there's always been natural speed readers. There's always been natural speed readers. Not a lot of them. There's people that nobody knows how they learned to speed read. This is something that's been around for many, many years. Uh, so there's several famous speed readers in history. You may not have heard of them, but there's a record of them. One of them is a man named Oliver Wendell Holmes. He was born around 1841, lived until 1932. He was an Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, and he was known to be a speed reader. One time, according to the story, he had a news conference. On some subject, there was a news conference, reporters were gathered, and he was there, but there was no information. The information he needed for the news conference had not been given to him yet. So he didn't know the information, but he was the one that was supposed to give the news conference. Somebody arrived with like 4 pages of information. They handed him the document. He looked at the document, and while he walked up to the microphone, which was about 30 seconds, he read the document, 4 pages worth. And then at the microphone, he fielded questions. He did this news conference, went to the microphone, and he answered detailed questions from the news reporters. So he was a very fast reader. That's like 2,000 words a minute, at least, and under a lot of pressure. Another one was John Stuart Mill. Lived about 1808 till about 1873. John Stuart Mill's father was the head of as I recall, the East India Company. And John Stuart Mill may have been the head of the East India Company at some point too. But I know his father was, for sure. John Stuart Mill was also a member of Parliament, as I recall. In the 1800s, he wrote some famous books. Anyway, he, in his diary, I believe it was, he complained that he was limited by how fast he could read by the rate at which he could turn the pages. He was a very fast reader, and for many years he was listed as the smartest person in history, highest IQ, of an estimated IQ of 210, something like that. Very high IQ, very fast reader. Another famous speed reader, natural speed reader, was Teddy Roosevelt, U.S. President from 1901 to 1909. Teddy Roosevelt was known to read a book every morning before breakfast. And depending on his schedule, he could read 2 or 3 more books in the evening. And he made great use of his speed reading skill when he was president. For example, if he had a visiting dignitary coming from another country, for example, maybe a diplomat, someone he needed to visit for reasons of being the president, he would actually assign somebody to go to the Library of Congress, get 3 books on whatever subject the visiting dignitary was interested in, what his personal interests, just something this guy was personally interested in, not even necessarily related to the job of what they were going to discuss, just what that person's personal interests were. They would go, say he was interested in the pyramids of Egypt or metallurgy or some topic of particular interest. They would bring back the books of this particular topic or topics of interest, and he would read all 3 books. Then the dignitary would come the next day, and while they're talking over dinner or just random talk in his conversation with this visitor, he'd start talking about metallurgy or the pyramids of Egypt in great detail. in such detail that it would just stun this person that the President of the United States had so much interest in the same things he was interested in. They always became closer friends. It was a great way to become personal friends with the dignitaries he was visiting, and it helped him as a president too, just being able to bond closely with these people. So he was a very famous speed reader. By his own admission, he read tens of thousands of books during his lifetime. He was very well known to be a very fast reader, and he read tons of books. Okay, so this concept of natural speed readers kind of rose to the consciousness of Evelyn Wood in 1947. She was working on as I recall, she was working on a master's degree. And she had a preliminary copy of her master's thesis. She brought it to the professor who was the one she was working with and said, here, this is my thesis. It was like 80 pages. She gave it to him, and within just a few minutes, like 5 minutes, he read the entire thing right in front of her. He was just flipping through the pages, flip, 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 about that rate, maybe a little faster, maybe a little slower, but pretty fast. And so she just stood there and watched him. And then when she was done, she says, are you going to read it? And he said, well, on page 60, you're missing a couple of footnotes. And on page 47, you've got to do a little more research on this, saying this one footnote over here. You got to have more information on that. You're really not describing everything well here. And he just went down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need to make these improvements. You need to do this and that. He understood it quite well. And he only spent just a few minutes just plowing through there, and you understood it all. It's like he really understood it quite well. She was just blown away. She had no idea anyone could read that fast with such good comprehension. Not only what she had there, but what she was missing and she should have put in there. So this was a landmark moment in her life. At that point, she became interested in how people can read so fast and retain so much. So anyway, that's the rest is history for her. But the whole concept we're worried about here is natural speed readers. Where do they come from, and how do they become one? It's an interesting concept because they've always been out there. There's some people that have always been natural speed readers. Where do they come from? So let's kind of get a definition here. This is not an official definition. I don't know if there is a real official definition, but for the purposes of this video, let's just say a natural speed reader is somebody that can read 1,000 words a minute or faster with good comprehension, and either nobody taught them how to read that fast or they don't recall how they learn. They just always been able to do it. This is quite often the case. There's one group, I believe it's the German Society of Speed Reading. They've interviewed several natural speed readers. And one thing that, as I recall, most of them learned to speed read before they entered school. Before they were in first grade, they were already speed readers. Not always. Some people learn to speed read after they enter school. So one pattern is they learn quite early. So first graders start about age 6. So figure they're already speed readers by the time they're 6. They learn young. Not always, but there's quite a few of them that learn quite young. Okay, so how did they learn the skill? I've been teaching speed reading for 20 years, over 20 years, since 1997. And I have personally met, by my estimate, probably 10 natural speed readers. And I've been aware for many years that there are natural speed readers out there. I've talked with a few. That doesn't mean I've had detailed conversations with them or detailed interviews. I haven't. I've just had just a random conversation. I find out, oh, they're already a speed reader, and you find out, well, how did you learn to speed read? Turns out nobody taught them. They've always been able to speed read like that. I read a few like that, and that seems to be the pattern. They don't even remember how they learned. But that's not always the case. I can think of two cases of one of someone I personally, two girls that were in a class I taught. They came in, and for the first minute or so of our speed reading instruction, I say, let's do a regular reading. I want you to read this book, your regular speed, and we just want to see how fast you go, just to start off with, like a preliminary just to get an idea how fast you already read, because I always tell people I'd like to at least double your reading speed. Well, this girl, she was 14 years old. She read 3,000 words a minute, which is 15 times faster than the average high school graduate. Average high school graduate reads 200 words a minute. Average college graduate reads about 300 words a minute. So she was reading way faster than that, 10 times faster than the average college graduate, and she had pretty good comprehension. Her little sister was taking the class with her. Her sister was like 12 years old. She was reading, as I recall, about 1,200 words a minute, which is still mind-blowing fast. So 1,200 words a minute, 3,000 words a minute. Both of them were natural speed readers. At that time, I didn't quiz her. Well, how did you learn any of that stuff? I just didn't have that conversation. She was a student in the class. I was just doing the class. And I didn't have that conversation. And I have no idea where she is now. So don't know how to get back to her and ask her those questions now. But I don't know how the older one learned. Maybe someone taught her. No one taught her, because she was in the speed reading class to learn how to speed read. She had no idea she was a speed reader. She had no idea she was doing anything different. She just wanted to read faster. And the little sister was 1,200 words a minute. So my theory with them is the little kids are copycats. Big sister already speed reads. Little sister just copycats what her big sister does. So that's probably, in my opinion, how the younger sister learned to speed read. She just saw her sister and just copycatted. How the older one came to speed read, I don't know. Maybe she copycatted someone else. I don't know. Okay, and I don't know at what age they learn to speed read. I don't know. So that's one thing I don't know, but that's a theory I have on that case. Another one is there was a lady I knew. I never met her son, but I knew the lady. I knew her for several years. I was I had a job, a business where I would go into that business once every 2 to 4 weeks. And I'd see her on a regular basis over the period of several years. I was like a delivery guy. And one day I got talking about speed reading, and she goes, oh, my son learned how to speed read when he was 6 years old, by accident. I said, really, by accident? So she told me how it happened. She said, yeah, he was in first grade. His name was Johnny. That's all I remember. Johnny was in first grade. Johnny got this one day after, at the end of his lesson, the teacher said, now, Johnny, take this book home, and I want you to read your lesson. Well, in the teacher's mind, she's thinking, okay, read this lesson, page 6, page 7, whatever the lesson is. Johnny misunderstood the teacher. He thought he had to read the whole book. So he took it home and he went through the whole book. So the next day, the teacher says to Johnny, Johnny, here's your book. I want you to take this book home and read your lesson. And she means the next lesson, meaning page 7 and 8. He misunderstood that. He went back, took it home, and he read the whole book again. And this went on several days. She'd give him the book, tell him to read the next lesson, and he read the entire book over again. So after several days, my friend, she said she saw Johnny reading through the whole book. She goes, Johnny, you don't have to do that. But she said it was too late. He already knew how to go through the entire book and understand it all. He was a speed reader. And for the rest of his life, at that time, he was in his 40s, 45, 50 years old, something like that. He was a director of a cancer clinic in Montana. And then a couple months later, I said, how fast does your son read? He's about a page every second. And he's always been able to read a page every second. I said, well, does he have a photographic memory? She goes, yes, he remembers everything. You can ask him any question about what he read, and he'll go right to the book that it comes from, and you'll point to the book, he'll pull it off the shelf, he'll open up the page, and he can point to the exact line of where that is. 1 page a second. He has that kind of a memory of what he had read. So in that case, I know where that natural speed reader learned. It was an accidental thing. The school teacher gave him an assignment. He misunderstood it, thought he had to read the entire book. That's how he learned his speed read, just accidental. So what triggers someone to learn speed reading as a natural speed reader? And obviously in some cases it's accidental. They just stumble onto something by accident, and they catch on to it, and they just keep doing it because it's so easy. They understand it. Why go slow? So what can we learn from these natural speed readers? I'd say there's several things that we can learn, really important points. Number one, very young children can learn to speed read, and very young children already are learning to speed read. The natural speed readers that we see, there's a high percentage of them. I don't know what the percentage is, but just from what I know on my own and what I've learned from others that have actually had some interaction with them, natural speed readers quite often learn how to speed read before they enter school. 5 years old, 4 years old, I'm not sure the ages. It probably varies. Okay, so they learn at a young age. I was interviewed, he didn't know when he learned to speed read, but he knew it was after he entered school. So he entered school age 5 maybe. By the time he was 9 years old, he knew that he was speed reading. So in his case, he learned to speed read after he entered school, maybe age 2nd grade, 3rd grade. Yeah, by 3rd grade, for sure, he was speed reading. Age 8 or 9, for sure. But in most of the cases that they had interviewed, they had learned to speed read before school. So there's a range there, maybe age 4 all the way to age 9. That's kind of an interesting thing to know. That's a good age to learn to speed read and become a natural speed reader for them. So the best time to speed read, apparently, and become a natural speed reader is when you're very young, age 4 to age 9. Another thing we learn is since natural speed readers didn't possess the skill of being a natural speed reader when they were born, they had to learn it somewhere. Somebody taught them, or they learned it at some point somewhere. So it can be learned, it can be acquired. They obviously did. And in many cases, it was probably accidental. They just somehow noticed, hey, I'm seeing this whole line at a time. Let's just keep doing it. I'm understanding it. Why waste my time? It's just an internal thing, maybe accidental. Okay, the only reason that you and I are not, or we're not natural speed readers is because we weren't lucky enough to have somebody show us how to be a natural speed reader when we were 4 years old, or 6 years old, or 8 years old. That's the only reason more of us aren't natural speeders. Nobody nobody showed us. And I guess there's one more thing we could do. The purpose, one of the big purposes of what I do, I wrote a book, Speed Reading for Kids. I've also put up a website called Speed Reading for Preschoolers to get the information out there. I just want the information to be out there so parents that are interested can actually show their children how to become natural speed readers. Take the element of chance out of it. It's really an element of chance why we never got the chance to be a natural speed reader. By actually having a set of instructions or just an idea of how to do it, we take the element of chance out of it. And that way, if your child is predisposed to be a natural speed reader, they can have the opportunity. Sure, some people don't prefer to be a speed reader. That's okay. But maybe someone prefers to be a speed reader. It doesn't mean they have to speed read everything. I listened to an interview of a natural speed reader, and he could read 2,000 words a minute easily ever since he was 8 or 9 years old. And they asked him, well, can you slow read, like read out loud to people? Yeah, no problem. He can slow read just as easy as you and I can. They don't lose the ability to slow read just because they read fast. It's like having extra tools, or like a carpenter has all these power tools. And if he wants to do a big job, he uses the power tool. He can saw a board, and he can just do all this work, build a house a lot faster because he's got the power tools. He's not stuck with the old handsaw. You can do that. But if you got the power tool, you can do it a lot faster. Same thing, when you can speed read, you can get through books faster when you want to. Sometimes you want to read slowly. Sometimes, in my opinion, it's more appropriate to read slowly. If you're reading poetry, if you're reading lyrics to songs, sometimes it just has a better feel to hear the music while you're going through the words. Or if you're reading scriptures, or you're doing comparing text from one book to another book, and you got to go slowly to make sure that the comparison, you're seeing everything exactly. There's lots of reasons why you might want to go slowly. And just because you have the ability to go fast doesn't mean you have to, or it's even necessary. So I don't encourage anyone to get caught up in the idea that if you can speed read, you have to speed read everything. And all the speed readers I know, I don't personally know of anyone that always speed reads always and they never slow read. That just isn't true. That's just like a cartoon image that people have of speed readers. But in real life, speed readers aren't like that. Speed readers slow read whenever they want to. So getting back to natural speed readers, is if you want your child to be a natural speed reader, all you have to do is show them how. So take the element of chance out of it and find ways to show your child how to read faster. And there's information out there. You can go to one of my websites, you can get my book, you can do research on the internet. Find a way to show your child how to read faster when they're young. I don't know of one person who was a natural speeder, I don't know of any, that learned how to speed read when they're an adult. Natural speed readers are always learn how to speed read when they're young. That's the key age. It's like learning languages. Okay, that's all I have. Give this video a like and tell your friends, and talk to you later. Thank you so much. Bye.